by Mike Broad, October 1, 2017. Leaving the EU is likely to have profound effects on health in the UK and the NHS, posing threats to the NHS workforce and finances, the licensing of medical products, as well as the UK's leading role in public health and scientific research. Authors, writing in The Lancet, highlight that each of the Brexit scenarios, soft, hard, and failed, pose major risks to health, which will require serious considerations that should be incorporated into Brexit negotiations. Even under the scenario of a soft Brexit, which would minimize the impact on health, there are serious issues that government and policymakers need to consider, including workforce recruitment and retention, NHS financing, and governance issues on competition, trade, as well as the vast amount of new legislation, such as public health protections on tobacco, air quality, but also legislation of medicinal products, which would need to be transposed into UK law. Professor Martin McKee, one of the authors from the London School of Hygiene Tropical Medicine, said our analysis of how Brexit will affect the NHS, although the UK's desired outcome remains unclear, is that Brexit in any form poses major risks to almost every part of the NHS, with a no-deal scenario potentially catastrophic. The EU has shown that it recognizes many of these threats, and we hope that our paper encourages the UK negotiating team to make health issues a priority. One of the major risks is to NHS staff, and the authors note that it will be increasingly difficult for the UK to be self-sufficient in terms of its NHS and social care workforce. Estimates for 2017 suggest that 60,000 people from the EU work in the NHS and 90,000 work in adult social care, with an aggregation of staff working in London and the South East, which makes these regions especially vulnerable to a loss of labour. Another risk is the loss of funding to the NHS, which could occur directly through loss of European funds, and indirectly as a result of the possible impact of Brexit on the UK economy. The NHS has benefited from €3.5 billion in funds from the European Investment Bank since 2001, helping to fund various public-private partnerships. Additionally, the NHS forms the largest part of the UK's public expenditure, and would naturally be impacted by any events which affect the UK economy. The authors warn that, while the UK economy has performed relatively well since the referendum, once changes due to Brexit are put in place, they will likely have a significant long-term impact, and this will be likely to put pressure on NHS finances. Other major issues relating to funding would likely affect individuals living abroad and people traveling to the EU for work, study, or leisure, all of whom may lose their health coverage. Currently, the UK pays around £650 million per year for care provided to British people abroad, including £500 million for pensioners living abroad, which is marginal compared to the NHS budget, and represents good value for money, as treatments costs for pensioners in the EU are about half of their equivalent value in the UK. With an estimated 190,000 British pensioners living in other EU countries, this is likely to impact them most profoundly. Brexit poses a significant issue to research funding in the UK, where the EU's direct funding accounts for 17% of research contracts held by British universities, and an estimated 16% of academics in the UK are from other parts of the EU. The UK attracts substantially more EU grants than it contributes to, and loss of this would have severe consequences, particularly as the UK lags behind comparative economies in its investments in research and development nationally. Lead author, Nick Fahey, of University of Oxford, said health is often thought to be a purely national matter, relatively insulated from the consequences of Brexit. That is not the case, as this analysis shows. Leaving the EU will have wide-ranging impacts on health and the National Health Service. These must be addressed now, if the consequences of Brexit are not to be borne by the sick and the vulnerable.